It was a project that was established during COVID, during the pandemic times, due to a need of a more coordinated approach to get support where it was most required. So the project's ambitions are really to support charities to do what they do better through data. We want to try and help connect you to relevant data, and provide learning opportunities to upskill us as a VCSE sector. We also want the project to feel warm and accessible. So please never feel like there's a silly question. You can ask us whatever you'd like to, and we will endeavour to help. The project is funded by the partners that you can see on the screen there. They all financially contribute towards a small amount of dedicated officer time, and also to the local insight tool to enable that to be free for other charities to use. And the rest of the project group give their time in kind to help support the project because they're passionate about the charity sector and in some cases about data. We're not all data specialists though. That's what I would say is we've all got varying levels of experience, but we all bring skills and real life experience of using data in our jobs in some way. Okay. So moving on to what we'll cover today. Ben's going to kick off with talking us through demonstrating need, and then Richard will explain how to gather and show evidence. Monique will then talk us through involving the community in demonstrating interest in your project. And slight change to this agenda. I haven't changed the slides, but Monique will also talk us through a little bit around organisational readiness. So I think now I'm going to pass over to Ben, if you're ready.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. Hi, everyone. Nice to see so many people here today. Just a quick little bit, this is going to be the starting process that funders are going to look at. So this is the first stage that we're interested in. This is demonstrating the need. So what sort of things do they want to see? They're going to see real evidence need for your project. So we're going to break that down in a little bit. Understand why the need exists and who is affected. And also that you're not actually, there's someone down the road doing exactly the same thing already. So the sort of things we might put in to structure your answer or the first part of the form or application. What sort of opportunity or challenge are you trying to deal with? Describe the need as clearly as possible. Try and think about who exactly is affected. So that could be an age range, that could be males, females, that could be people living in a certain area or a certain part of town. So just try and narrow it down a little bit in your answer to start with, and then that gives the funders a little bit more insight into what you're trying to achieve. And then how big is the challenge? So try and quantify the need. So here you could use statistics, local or national data, and on the Bucks Data Exchange we've got quite a lot of data that you can tap into, but there might be even more sources that you can find that will really drill down to what you're trying to do. Add lived experiences, so the numbers and that are really, really important, but actually let's bring it to life a little bit. Let's get some quotes or feedback from the community or those that are currently impacted or may be impacted. Show the consequence of an inaction. So if this project doesn't go ahead or this bid doesn't work out, what's actually going to be the consequences? How will people be impacted, or how would an area be impacted? Also think about the time of year. You could try and say, why is the action needed now? So is there a specific time of the year when things are worse? Is it, you know, every winter things could be a problem? So look at the seasons and the timing of the bid as well. Thanks, Kirsty. Next one. So here's like a little, we've slimmed this right down, but it sort of tries to pick out the key points here of who is affected, where, what happens if nothing changes, and why act now. So on the right hand side, as an example, in the past 2 years, the number of young people in a certain area reported loneliness has risen by 35%. So that's a stat from Public Health that you'd be able to get off the website. But then we're going to drill down slightly more local. Our consultations with 60 local families show that there are very few free social or creative opportunities, and also in there is an age range, so you've tied it down to 11 to 16-year-olds, so that's really homing in on the target age of the audience. And then the only youth club closed in 2022. So you're saying that there was only one. So that's another important factor, leaving a significant gap in provision. So what would happen if nothing changes? So without the new activities, the young people risk further social isolation and disengagement from education. So that's given the consequence if this provision isn't put forward. So what does the project do to tackle those elements? The project responds directly to this gap by creating weekly creative workshops. And then there's also, it says in partnership with local schools, which is obviously any stakeholders, key partners you would want to put in as well. And next one, Kirsty. So three or four key points from me: be evidence-based. So back up any statements you make that say, oh, there's a, we've heard there's a problem in this area with data or feedback from people. And also importantly, just put in the references and sources of the dates and the dates that you access the information. So that will actually, if the funder wants to go and just drill in a little bit to the things you're talking about, they can clearly see where the information came from. As I've mentioned, focus groups, community meetings, user feedback is a very important element. And then actually, if you can name who was consulted, so don't just put the council if it was the council or a service user, try and put like a named department in the council or a named contact. And the same with partners, try and tie it right down so they can see that you've actively engaged with those people. So a little example to end on there. The need was identified through discussions with 45 parents, 2 schools and youth workers who all highlighted a lack of free after-school creative activities. So that's the sort of sentence that you could try and do with the evidence behind the scenes as well referenced. And on that, I'll pass to Richard. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Ben. So hi all, I'm Richard. I'm Operations Manager at Heart of Bucks. So Ben's given a really good overview of sort of defining the need and what funders are looking for. I'm going to try and focus a bit more on the practical side of how you actually collect and present that evidence in a simple way. So this obviously links directly into what Ben's just been talking about, but I'm going to try not to repeat too much and kind of build on that instead. But I think the first thing is that the word evidence often has quite like scary connotations, sort of like the word data. We sort of find it quite daunting. We think it's evidence has to mean really complicated research or long reports, something really resource intensive, but it really doesn't have to be that at all. And the way we define evidence is just, it's simply how you know that the work is needed. And so most small charities in Buckinghamshire already have far more evidence than they think they do. It's in places that we don't often always look, our sign-in sheets, our everyday conversations, our gut instinct about demand and how that's changing. So when it actually comes to gathering evidence, a lot of the time that's actually just organizing what you already know and what you already collect. But there are, if we just move on to the next slide, please, Kirsty. I've sort of broken it up into 3 main practical sources of evidence. So these are the places you can gather evidence from. The first being external or open data, the second operational evidence, and the third light touch community feedback. And you only really need 1, maybe 2 examples from each group to get your point across. And I think that's especially true in funding applications, which often have word limits. So you've really got to get it across quite succinctly. So you don't need this massive amount of data. So the first one, external data, open data and local insight. This is qualitative data and information, so numbers, statistics, things like that. It's already available from other official sources outside of your organisation. So this could be NHS, could be Buckinghamshire Council, it could be gov.uk and so on. And this type of data is where the local insight platform that Kirsty mentioned earlier comes in really handy, because I could keep going with a really long list of potential data sources that you could find available online. And it can take quite a lot of work to trawl through all those different places looking for a specific piece of relevant information. And what the local insight tool does is it provides a bit of a shortcut because it pulls all of this data into one place. So anyone who hasn't used it yet, it's a third-party platform, and it lets you explore data, map-based or sort of table-based data about the area that you work in. And so the Bucks Data Exchange partners have funded access to the platform for Buckinghamshire. You can get to it straight from our website. It's free to access. You don't need an account or a login. There's no extra steps. You can just access it straight from your web browser. And it's packed with over 1,500, I think, neighborhood level data indicators. And so these are all reliable, up-to-date official sources, but all pulled into one place. And I did a bit of a demo of some of the basic functions at our first Lunch and Learn session, but it's map-based, as I mentioned, so you can look at your local area, you can zoom right in, get really granular with the data, and there's all sorts of information on there, from demographics and crime to environment, economy, and lots more. It's all in one place, so you can quickly pull out that key stat that you're looking for, that's relating to the project that you're proposing. And we'll be doing more local insight demos in the future, but we have got one short video already up on the website with more to come. But if you haven't tried it, do feel please have a look. As I say, it's free, and we think it's a really valuable resource. But the second sort of area of data is operational evidence. And this is stuff you already collect yourselves, most likely, but it's the stuff that people most often forget still counts as evidence. So it could be things like your attendance numbers or growth in referrals, waiting lists, repeat visitors, inquiries, perhaps people keep asking for the same thing over and over again, or notes from support sessions. Any of these things can be really useful data. So basically, if you've noticed something changing, you're getting more calls, you're getting that same request over and over, or your waiting list is growing significantly, that's all evidence that you can use to demonstrate the need in your funding application. And then thirdly is light touch community feedback. So this goes back to Ben's point about really including some of those quotes, some of those voices of the people you're actually working to support. So an insight that you've, funnily enough, gathered from the community. And Monique will talk a bit more about this in a minute. But again, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of work and this, massive in-depth surveys asking 50 questions. It can be really simple. One question on a post-it note, or a 5-minute chat, or a really quick poll. So even the really simple stuff can give some really impactful information that really brings it to life and evidences that need. Next slide, please. So the ideal thing is to try and pull these 3 pillars together. And one simple method is called triangulation, which is just a fancy term for using a piece of data from each of those 3 different pillars. So for example, say I'm applying for continued funding for a series of creative learning courses for young people. My operational evidence might be that our waiting list has grown from 10 to 35 people over the last 6 months, showing that there's clear demand and that's growing. My community feedback evidence might be that we polled a cohort of young people on one specific question, and 68% of them came back and said they want more opportunities to access creative learning programs. So I've shown that I've spoken to the community and got that insight from them, and that this is actually something that they want. And then my external data could be from local insight, data showing that youth unemployment in my target area is especially high. So I can relate this back to learning and skills development through the program that I want to deliver. So none of these are big, they don't take huge amounts of time or resources, but by assembling just a couple small pieces of different types of evidence in this way, I'm really starting to paint that clear picture of the need. And obviously you don't have to follow this exact formula, it's just one example, but a lot of strong funding applications will use data from different types of sources rather than just one or the other. And it shows that you understand that big picture with that open data, and you've also got the local context that is felt in the community. And then the final point, which is also repeating Ben, I'm afraid, but make sure if you have the word count to mention where your sources have come from. This helps funders to really feel confident in the information you're providing. So I know that was a very, very basic and very quick whistle through, but in the interest of time, I'm going to hand over to Monique, who's going to talk a bit more about involving the community. Monique?
Thanks, Richard. So I'm Monique, I'm the Evaluation Manager for the Grants team at the Rothschild Foundation. So as highlighted by Richard, there are many different ways that you can gather evidence for your application. And some funders may ask directly about the process of identifying that need. So it's always important to think about what question they're asking of you. And they may place value on projects that are shaped by the people that they serve. So this is really about showing that you're need wasn't assumed and that it was identified through these kind of different techniques that are mentioned here. So it's often with individuals with lived experience of the issue that you're aiming to address. And so I won't go through these in lots of detail, but as Richard mentioned, it doesn't need to be a really complicated approach. It can be, as we'll see in the example on the next slide, it can be quite simple, but it's just kind of layering those strands of information together. On to the next one, Kirsty. So there's kind of a simple structure you might think about for this kind of question. So it's describing how the need came to light, whether that's through, as Richard mentioned, some operational evidence, or if it's that light touch community feedback, consultation, or the external data. So that's kind of the first point you might read is kind of how you did that. So in this example here, they held a 1-hour pop-up conversation at a community cafe in High Wycombe. Next, it's kind of showing who was involved in that. So there's 23 local residents participated, mostly families or older adults. And mention the methods that you use to do that. So in this case, they had a post-it board with 2 questions: what's missing locally and what activity would you take part in? And then it's really summarising what you learned from that activity and how it's helping you shape what your programme or offer might be in response. So here it's the responses indicated that people wanted more creative activities and intergenerational events. So this shaped the design of a monthly creative Saturday intergenerational programme. Thanks, Kirsty. So moving on to demonstrating interest. So in some applications, you might be asked to explain how you know there's both a need and interest in your project or the service that you're offering. So really people are looking for that reassurance that it's not only needed, but it's wanted by your beneficiaries or the people that will actually participate. And there's several ways that you might do that. For example, you can track engagement and feedback from early activities that you've done to show that the need and interest before we can scale up to more of those events or a larger scale of that project. So this could be capturing data in terms of like waiting lists and the sign-ups to those initial events, whether you have expressions of interest or the specific partner endorsements. And where possible, again, kind of reiterating what the others have said, it's useful to provide some numbers or kind of tangible evidence. So, for example, if you had a pilot workshop in week 1, you found that it was fully booked and you had 42 on the waiting list, and on your follow-up post-event survey, 95% that they might attend again. And it may be that you also have some letters of support from local schools or community partners that commit to kind of take part in the next strand of your programme or to refer people to your offer. Thanks, Kirsty. So this really helps, I think, when you have this evidence to make the funder feel confident that there will be people engaging with your service. So the next thing that you might be asked to explain is kind of why your organisation is well placed to meet the needs of the people you're supporting and the challenges that they're potentially facing. So this is really about showing your credibility and capacity to do that. So you want to be confident that you can successfully and responsibly deliver that, and you can illustrate this in several different ways. So it's maybe summarising your organisation's track record. What similar work have you done, or projects that have the same kind of outcomes that have been achieved, and how long maybe you've been working in that location. Is there certain expertise of your staff that you maybe highlight and that they bring to this project, and then that might include lived experience of the work that you're doing? And are there any partners or collaborations that really strengthen your offer and help with the reach of your project or your work? And kind of lastly, just referencing the governance and your policies that are in place. So how is your governance kind of set up, and how do you manage quality, kind of risk, safeguarding and inclusion within your work? And I think by really briefly using numbers and facts, you can show quite quickly that scale and reliability of your service. So, for example, in this point below, there's an organisation that's been working for 8 years delivering arts and wellbeing programmes, and across the year they reach an average of 2,000 participants, and they work with their qualified staff, and they have lots of local partnerships that enable them to deliver that. Thanks. I'll now hand back over to Kirsten, who's just going to give us a quick summary.
Thank you, Ben, Richard and Monique. So in summary, we've covered that funders want to see real need, solid evidence, community interest and organisational readiness. So answering those big questions of who, where, what happened if it wasn't addressed and why act now. Then we covered off some practical sources for gathering evidence. So Richard talked us through those sort of three different sources, ideas of how to engage and involve the community, ways of demonstrating interest in what you're proposing, and also finally how to show your organisation is ready for action. I realise that's quite a short, swift run through, but hopefully there's been some useful information shared so far. And we'll shortly move on to a Q&A section where we'll happily take questions from both the chat, and if you want to raise your hand and come off mute, we'd love to hear your voices. I know sometimes these sort of lunchtime sessions people need to shoot off to other meetings. So before we go on to the Q&A section, just a few sort of quick calls to action, if I may. So we'd really love you to complete our post-event survey and help us data on how we're doing. So Kayla's just sharing that in the chat now. We know you're already busy and surveys are sometimes the last thing you want to be doing, but it's really valuable input in helping us to improve what these sessions look like, learning if they're actually valuable or not for you, and what the real challenges are that you face. And then we'll use those responses to shape future events. Secondly, Richard talked about the local insight tools. So that is directly linked from the Bucks Data Exchange website. It has a public-facing side so that you can access those maps of lots of really popular data sets. But it also has a reports function and a dashboard function. So if you're looking to do a deep dive into a particular topic, whether that's employability or poverty or any of those sort of big topics, then do get in touch with us. The contact details are for the email address are on the website as well, and we can look at running bespoke reports for your area or your topic. Thirdly, sign up to our newsletter. We won't bombard you and we won't share your details with anyone else, but we'll try and keep you up to date with what's happening with the Bucks Data Exchange and this sort of collaborative effort to try and improve the way we all use data for good. And finally, our next Lunch and Learn is on Wednesday, the 4th of February. So same time, 12 o'clock, same format, but next time we'll be talking about data tools and how they can help you and your charity. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of time to think of some questions. Kayla, I think you were going to just have a quick look through the chat for us and try and navigate who was going to answer which questions as they came up.
Yes. We did have a question from Christabel, but asking for the data source that Ben spoke about, but Ben's very quickly put a link in the group chat already. And I don't see any other questions.
That's either everyone's just really enjoying their lunch, or we've just answered the questions. So if you do have anything that comes up, we'll give everyone a couple more minutes. But if you do have anything else that comes up, but please do let us know question-wise. And we really love to know how, did we pitch this right? Was it the right level of information for you? Or have you got sort of unanswered questions that you'd like more detail on? Oh, brilliant. Tony, hello.
It's not really related to today's session, but was this one of a series of lunch and learns, or was this, because I thought it would be a one-off type thing. I was more interested in the collecting the data, analysing the data. So I wasn't, that's my question. Is this a series of lunch and learn events? So you need to come to each one, really?
Yeah, well, it is a short series. So yeah, the first one we did back in October, and then we've got another one in February, specifically around the kind of what to collect data. We haven't sort of done a deep dive into that one, but it's definitely something that we're open to new topics. at the moment, we're in a slight holding pattern with the project, so we're just awaiting future funding confirmation ourselves. So hopefully in January we can release a few more dates with a few more topics. But yeah, if you've got specific questions, feel free to get in touch via the email, and we can definitely help explore those.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Susan. Okay, well, if there's no big flurry of questions, we can draw to a close there. Feel free to stay on, myself and the project group will, for a little longer. But thank you for joining us today. I know you're all really busy people, and hopefully we will see you in February. And good luck with any funding applications you have that you're writing before then. Thanks all. Take care.
Thank you.